Hello and welcome to today's Industry Week webinar, Fast, Precise, Digital, NASCAR's take on manufacturing excellence, sponsored by Tulip. I'm Jill Jesko. I'm Executive Editor for Industry Week. Now I'd like to welcome today's speakers. Joining us are Kevin Kidd, Director, Software and Analytics for RFK Racing. With nearly 25 years of experience in automotive and motorsports engineering, Kevin leads a team to develop innovative software solutions and data optimizing race car performance. He is passionate about enhancing speed, safety, and sustainability in racing operations with a relentless focus on optimization. Joining Kevin is Humberto Silva, Customer Success Manager at Tulip. Humberto has 20 plus years of experience in manufacturing, program management, and consulting. After spending 6 years of his early career in multiple manufacturing roles at Procter & Gamble, Humberto pursued an MBA and transitioned into consulting, specializing in program management. At Tulip, Humberto is a customer success manager where he helps customers adopt and use Tulip to transform their operations. And with that, welcome to you both, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jill. Thanks, Kevin. And thanks for the audience, for those who take the time to join us today. And if you are watching the recording, thank you again for taking time to do that. Before getting started, I'm very excited for the session we have today. But before we get started, I wanted just to show you the agenda, what we have for you in a 3-part act. I guess we'll start by giving you a little bit of context on RFK Racing and the relationship that they may have with manufacturing. You may be wondering why are we going to talk about a NASCAR team and how does that relate to your operations? So we want to make sure to make that case early and upfront. Then we're going to dive a little bit more on like specifically RFK Racing path to digitization and using technology for their operation. And there we're going to see in some detail some of the Tulip apps they have built and again, some of the impact that they have been achieving with that. And towards the end, what we wanted to do is give you a little bit of reflections, lessons learned from Kevin. What is the future looking like for RFK for this year? And also make sure that you can take very specific actions that you can take to your organization. So make sure that you look a little bit more like NASCAR. I'll before getting started, I'll start by saying that in my career in manufacturing, and Kevin, I forgot to mention this in the past. NASCAR has popped up in my career twice. The first time when I was working in Procter & Gamble, we did rapid changeovers, mimicking some of the methodologies of the pit crews. Oh, yeah. Now that again, I have the luck to stumble upon again a NASCAR team. It's very exciting, but I'll be frank, it's hard for me to understand a little bit of what are the challenges and what is the process. So one thing we wanted to do, just to give a sense to the audience of the complexities, is we wanted to run a little poll for you guys. It's a little fun to get into the idea of what are we talking about the operations here. So again, the poll should be showing in your screen, and you should have an option to display to select an options. But I'll read you very, very basic. How many parts do you think RFK Racing manages in their database? Kevin, what's the real number?
Yeah, I looked it up just so I had the exact precise number as of about an hour ago. This number changes all the time. We're currently at 46,199 as of an hour ago.
There you go. A few of you actually, I think I was leading the witness here. So a few of you picked the right number, but yeah, 46,000 parts. So again, keep in mind that when you think about NASCAR, you think about the cars. You don't. I was blown away by that number. And again, what we're trying to do here is to show you a little bit of the complexity of the operation itself that doesn't distill when you're looking in the TV on Sunday at the cars running around the oval, around the track. So if we go back here, again, Kevin, at a high level, and I know we're going to jump into a specific operation, but just to level set with the audience, what does the process look like in general after a NASCAR race? What happens, hopefully after you ended up in one of the top positions? What is the process? What is your operation? what do you have to do from week to week that requires you to have processes and digitization to this level?
Yeah. So, in a perfect world, on a Monday morning, job number one is to take some pictures with the car and clean off all the champagne and confetti from a good successful day at the racetrack. That doesn't always happen. So, all jokes aside, we bring 3 cars back to our facility. Most races, we're based in Charlotte, North Carolina, and so most races that are east of the Mississippi River, those cars are back in our facility Monday morning, bright and early, when the staff show up. And the job at hand at that point is to go through and collect a little bit of data off the cars. We do some post-race analysis. That's sort of a routine part of our process. And then we go to teardown. And in the teardown process, I think this tends to surprise people, but we tear the cars completely apart, all the way to the chassis. And in some cases, we're actually splitting the chassis apart as well. The reason for this is that we have a very intricate system of processes that go on regarding each component on the car. Those components, basically, when the checkered flag drops on a Sunday, all those parts are deactivated in our system. They're not able to be put on another race car for competition until they go through these processes. And what are those processes? They're inspection, maintenance processes, things that basically prepare those parts to go race again. And, so as part of that, we go through the teardown process, and we're pulling all those parts off and sending them back to their sub-assembly areas to then go through our work order system that we've created to basically become validated again for a race moving forward.
And so, Kevin, you would say that is a process that it's done in a similar way for all the teams? All the teams have to go through like the same steps?
Yes. Yeah, I think all teams, at our level are doing it in a similar fashion. I think everybody has their own little creative spin on maybe what this looks like, but at a high level, I think everybody is definitely, ensuring that the parts, pieces, and components are ready for competition moving forward. And, I like to tell people that we effectively build a brand new race car every single week, 3 of them every single week for competition. That's right. It may not have absolute brand new parts on it every time, but it is effectively a brand new build for each event.
Makes sense. And Kevin, so now if we take a step back and with that as a context of this is the challenge that your team has week to week, how does RFK Racing approaches this challenge? I know you guys have a specific background in engineering and manufacturing and technology that it's not the typical one. So could you tell us a little bit about, like, again, how do you guys approach technology and partnerships?
Yeah. So for us, we're very much technology first, engineering driven organization. It's sort of our DNA. To compete at a high level on Sunday, you have to take advantage of the margins, so to speak, the areas of opportunity for performance that exist for us. We compete in a very highly competitive industry with a ton of regulations that we have to adhere to, and so our opportunity to perform lies sort of in the cracks or in the margins. And so, over the last handful of years, we've really understood that leveraging, things like data science and technology and higher level mechanical engineering topics, these are the areas that allow us to, go find performance in the margins, so to speak. And so our approach, particularly as we have focused over the last 3 years since creating the RFK Tech Alliance, our approach is to to be the best in the industry at technology. Simple as that. We're pushing the edge in many different areas to make sure that we have what we need to go get the job done. And it's a never-ending battle. I mean, we're constantly in pursuit of new technologies and new methods to improve our performance. It's constantly iterating, constantly searching for improvement. Because quite frankly, that's what our competitors are doing. And in the end, we're trying to be better than those guys.
Yeah, and I'll be remiss if I don't mention that Tulip is part of the Tech Alliance. But what I would like to mention as well here is that when we're talking about technology and digitization, it's not only about Tulip. Tulip is just a small piece of the puzzle. Again, this is your approach to technology in general, on the track, out of the track, software, hardware, et cetera, et cetera. So it's Kevin. So if we get down into the again, one level down into the complexities of this building the car, we understand we have to tear it down. There's many pieces that have to keep track. What was the challenge again? What is the challenge that you got that to solve? And when you approached Tulip, what was your vision to solve the complexity of the car with technology?
For us, preparing for a race event, all the complexity lies in all the sort of the preparation and the background work and making sure you have all the information at hand as you need it to make good decisions when preparing for that weekend. I like to tell people that racing these days, particularly in NASCAR, is won and lost in the shop. And if you really think about what we do, we're making quite literally thousands of decisions over the course of a 3 or 4 week period as you're preparing for a race event. And our competitors are doing the same thing. And so for us, if we can make more of those decisions correct and fewer incorrect, then we stand a chance of competing, at a high level on Sunday. And so what does it take to make correct decisions and string together those thousands of decisions all to work positively for you? A lot of it is about, having all the right information in hand at the time you need it. We build digital twins of the car for every race event, and we're doing this in a multi-body simulation environment. And so every one of our parts has, metrology information that's associated with it, and that feeds into this multi-body physics model that we're building. And that physics model is what we make a large portion of our decisions with as we go into a weekend. And so how does that all sort of, feed back into our process of building cars? We have a lot of decisions we can make. Do we want to run control arm X or control arm Y for this event? Do we want to run upright X or Y? That gets back into the dimensions. And so tying it all together, pre-2022, we were doing a lot of this sort of brute force with Excel and, email and, very archaic systems, a lot of paper getting pushed around the facility. And we consciously made the decision in 2022 that we were going to change that. And there was a process, multi-year process of doing this. But in the end, we really focused on the friction points. Where could we get the highest value of return in the lowest effort, and just prioritize that way all through the system to try to generate technology and systems that allowed us to go collect that information, put it in a proper database, be able to act on that information, and ultimately help drive our decision making all through the process of preparing for a race event.
Understood. So one of the reasons to use technologies, again, to get to that decision faster and in a more accurate way. One thing also that we mentioned, Kevin, I didn't have an appreciation for is the constraints that as a team you might have.
Mm-hmm.
So could you tell us a little bit more about how that and also how technology plays a key role in the restrictions you guys have as a team?
Yeah. So, the number one restriction that we have is the NASCAR rulebook. That's the thing that frustrates all of us engineers on a daily basis. It's in place for a good reason, though. So within that rulebook, and really, if you don't know much about NASCAR racing in general, it's probably a good time to explain a little bit of this. In 2022, we began racing what's called, the next gen car. This was a dramatic shift in the industry. Prior to that time, in what was called the Gen 6 car, we had quite a bit of design and creative control over the car. We had a rule book, but it didn't specifically say run this part. It just said this part needs to fit within these dimensions or rule sets. So we were allowed to design within that. And if you think about what a race team was at that point, we were a large design engineering house and quite frankly, a large manufacturing house. When next gen came on, the whole model shifted for a variety of reasons, most of which probably aren't super important for this discussion, but we shifted towards a more common model where every race team in the field has the same upright and has the same control arm and has the same transaxle, so on and so forth. Of those 46,000 parts we talked about, most of them are what we call controlled parts, or parts that are defined by NASCAR. NASCAR maintains the creative and design control of them, and we simply have to run those parts. And so, okay, yeah, huge shift in the industry. And what did that do for us? Well, it obviously took us somewhat out of the design engineering game, not completely, but somewhat. It took us quite a bit out of the manufacturing game, but it spun us into this assembly environment and quality control environment and metrology. A lot of topics that maybe we had one foot in prior to next gen, but going into the next gen world, we had to push both feet in and really get good at those things. And so, as we're living in this new world, it dramatically just shifted the operating model to where we had to adapt. We had to really grab hold of this new model, build the systems around it that allowed us to perform in the new world order, so to speak. A lot of where the performance lies now, when you go to the racetrack, again, is operating in those margins. So how can we take the same kit of parts and assemble it in a way that helps us build a faster race car? And within the margins, within what NASCAR gives us, we are allowed to do that. It's a constant game of understanding what you have and then optimizing around that. So back to the challenges question, I think it goes without saying the NASCAR rulebook is the challenge that we live to. And as you think about, at a deeper level, now we're in this world where we have all these spec parts. And when NASCAR sees a spec part post-race in teardown after a race, that part must be conforming to the design that NASCAR has for that part. Right. And for us, it was really important. We recognized this need early on, where we needed to have, ultimate traceability of every single one of our controlled parts, so that, if we were in a position where NASCAR was looking at us saying, hey, we don't like this part for reasons X, Y, Z, and we think you manipulated this, or we think, something happened here. Well, we needed good traceability. We needed a very good understanding of what that part has been through at every step along the way within our operation. From the moment it comes in the door from the vendor, every time it might get sent back to the vendor for processes, all the way to when we race it and back through the process. So we just have to have that level of traceability. It's almost, I think about it maybe like in pharmaceutical worlds or some of the more regulated industries. It's very much like that with our controlled parts, and we have a lot of controlled parts.
And the interesting thing is, again, I would imagine that the average folks that are in manufacturing would not really realize that those are the requirements that you have to like shift to.
Yeah.
So if I were to summarize this again, Kevin, like RFK Racing's technology is a key differentiator, and in reality, it's applied to everything where you can find an edge.
That's right.
For the race, either decision making or rebuilding the car faster or like training pilots better, whatever is required, which is it's a pretty cool thing to see.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna, and you already mentioned some of this in the previous slide, so I'm not gonna necessarily stop for a long time here. But if we dive into the specifics, you already mentioned that you guys realized you needed to change because, again, there's a lot of spreadsheets, manual data, the challenge of the rule book, changes in the sport itself.
Yeah.
How, once you realize the need to change, how do you go about it? How do you say, well, where do I start? What's the team? What was your approach to get started, get going?
Yeah. So, the approach, if you think about technology in a race team, there's and really just how the org chart is structured, there's two kind of lines of work. There's a competition side and then there's an operations side. Okay, what does that mean? Competition is really related to the race engineers, the crew chiefs, the drivers, the spotters, the pit crews, those guys, and they have a very heavy demand of technology requests and needs that our group has to build towards. There's also the operations group. It's the mechanics, the fabricators who are building our cars. It's their management, the production manager, and everybody that's involved in building our race cars. For the purposes of this, we'll focus on that latter part. Within that group, it really, on day one, when we decided, hey, we're gonna make technology better there. Well, first off, it's okay. What does better even really mean, and what's the what are sort of the goals we're trying to assess and achieve along the way? And that really quickly sort of steered us towards reducing friction in the system. For us, friction in the system, and it's probably this way with pretty much any company out there, but friction in the system is just, in essence, a performance inhibitor. And when we think about, the ultimate thing for us, every single Sunday, we're getting graded on our performance. We're always looking for the friction points in the system to be able to build cars better, build cars more accurately, build them with more speed. We have plenty of design requirements around what our car builds are from week to week, and it changes from week to week. And I like to tell people we're hand building Ferraris every week, 3 of them, and so when you're doing that, and you're doing it to a new build sheet every single week, you've got to be, as a mechanic or a fabricator, you've got to be very accurate on what you're building, because it changes, and you just really have to understand that you're delivering to the race team, the ultimate customer, the product that they're asking for. As a result of that, prior systems were very loaded with friction, and communication throughout the system, throughout the organization, wasn't always great. I thought about this yesterday as I was thinking about this webinar. We used to get literally the entire assembly organization, probably 60 people in a room every day, and just communicate about, what needed to happen that day. And it just, daily stand-ups are great, but there's a lot of drag just getting 60 people across campus to come to one room to have that meeting. And now with our systems, people come in, and as soon as they log into their computer, they know what they've got in front of them, and there's no question, and no more 30-minute windups to get to the meeting, and seeing people stopping at the coffee pot and everything else, and you basically lose an hour of productivity over the course of those 60 people. We don't have that anymore. And so that was like a very obvious and easy way to reduce friction. But it gets more granular than that. We've got all kinds of things that we've sort of attacked. And as you can see, some of the screens that we've built here, there's plenty of things that we've kind of gone after to reduce that friction along the way. And pretty proud of some of the things we've built.
Kevin, one of the things I'm impressed about is the speed in which you guys just took Tulip and run with it. And again, I'll give a shout out to Brian, your app builder. He's fantastic. But I'm just curious, like he himself couldn't have done this without having like a team on the operations team that will just buy his idea and help him. How do you guys see that partnership between like the classic IT operations? Is there such a thing as a tension between them, or like is there alignment? Do you guys have to do anything different?
Yeah. So one of the secrets to our software development success, and I'm not going to recommend this for every single industry. I think it's very unique for NASCAR. Our entire software development team, bar one, are actually mechanical engineers who picked up coding and software development along the way. So they really, at a deep level, understand what the job is, what we're trying to build, what we're trying to achieve. Brian Harrison is phenomenal. He's probably my prototype for this. He's worked so many different jobs in our company. He's been on the front lines at the racetrack. He just has a really good grounded understanding of the entire operation. And so it's really easy for him to walk out on the shop floor and have a discussion with a mechanic, and the mechanic says, "Hey, I'm fighting this problem," or I need the app to do this, not that. And Brian is one of the best at just taking that feedback and making it happen in real world. And there's no, I keep coming back to friction, but this is an area where there is no friction. Because we're just fortunate that we've got some really talented mechanical engineers who understand what software development's really about, and so we're able to marry those two together. Again, it might be just a unique NASCAR thing, or maybe that's actually more common than I realize. But we're blessed to have some pretty talented folks on the team that can do this.
And then, Kevin, from the operations side, I would imagine that folks are very vocal, and they would not settle for a solution that doesn't fit their need, right? So they keep pushing Brian back and forth.
That's right. Yeah. So, another area we're blessed is we've got world-class fabricators and mechanics and leaders of our team. And, we all operate at the bleeding edge of performance daily. And every Sunday, when our race is on Fox Sports, we're getting graded in front of the world. There's no burying our performance or anything like that. And so it's a demanding industry, and folks who work within it understand those demands. And there is a cordial level of push that exists between all the folks that work here. But we all understand that push is really grounded in making sure that the company can achieve, the ultimate performance.
Yeah, it comes with the territory, right? The competitive nature, you guys all bring it in.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so we think again about specifically how your guys are leveraging Tulip, and just to summarize, you're using it for the teardown, work order management, parts tracking, traceability, quality inspection. Beyond that, and I'm leading the witness because that's the other piece I wanted to show. Could you tell us a little bit? And again, this I know we have an example from Tulip that is cool, but beyond Tulip, how are you leveraging digital tools then on the other side of the house? You were talking about the operations piece, but now on the crew and the Pete on the day-to-day. Can you tell us a little bit of that
So,
space? Because I'm assuming there's a criticality there too, because errors in technology sometimes could be critical.
yeah. So, on that side of the house, a lot of our data science applications kind of fit in, and a lot of our, physics modeling, things like that. My group kind of handles all that. Interestingly, one area where Tulip fit in, and it's actually the very first Tulip app that we built at RFK. And it's a pretty good one to tell the story about. For years, NASCAR's been around since 1947 or something like that. But for all those years, for a variety of reasons, NASCAR has never allowed fuel gauges to be installed in the car. And so the drivers running around the racetrack, they might have an intuitive sense about how much fuel they have in, but there's no gauge in there telling them what they have. So it's up to the race engineers, the crew chiefs, our support staff back in the war room, to use the analytics to determine, how much fuel is in the car and when do we need to pit based on fuel, things like that.
And Kevin, this is happening in real time.
Yeah, real time, right in the middle of the race. So the way this was done for a very long time was all just kind of back and napkin calculator and a scale to measure the weight of the fuel that was being dumped into the car each time. We knew the density of the fuel, so it was pretty easy to convert that to volume. And then from that, you knew the laps you ran, and you could do kind of like an average fuel mileage over the course of a run during the race. And then you kind of used that average fuel mileage, made some determinations from there how accurate or inaccurate it was for reasons X, Y, Z, and over the course of the race, you would kind of stack up an average of averages, and that's kind of how you project it out. And I hope anybody that is listening to this says, man, that sounds like really crazy, really archaic, and very imprecise. And the truth is, yes, that is the way it worked for a long time, but it is very imprecise.
And the consequences of a mistake could be dire.
Yes, absolutely. And so fast forward to where we're at today, a few things have kind of gone in our favor on this. So we don't have fuel gauges in the car, but we do have live telemetry coming off the cars these days that feeds back into all of our systems. And from that live telemetry, we have throttle position, we have engine RPM, and just from those two signals alone, we're basically able to kind of work it down to on a lap by lap basis what our fuel consumption was. And so then there's a missing component of, okay, great. Well, how much fuel did you start with on each pit stop? Because we don't fill the car up all the way every single time. And
right.
So you don't, you can't just go to like, hey, it's 21 and a half gallons every single time. That's not how it works. So we still have to do that weighing of fuel process and then tracking it back down to volume. And so back to the Tulip app that we built. This was the first thing we did. We built an app that connected into our fuel scales, and we're able now to basically put the fuel can pre-stop on the scale, hit a button, log that weight, and then that same can post-stop, we scan a QR code, which then triggers the weighing process, and then we take that and put it back into our database. Now allows us, because that information is in the database, to tie that into all the other information coming in and basically drive our entire fuel calculation process, really automated now, other than scanning a QR code. That's the thing that triggers the whole thing. So that has been a well-received app by everybody who touches the fuel process,
right?
Because it allows us to do a job that was quite clunky and quite frankly, susceptible to error. We've kind of, really, made that whole process streamlined and much more robust.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you think it through, I would argue adding fuel to the car is a non-value added activity, but it becomes so critical to do it properly that, yeah, you have to be very precise. And then what it's interesting, I'm thinking through is, and I'm going to tie this back to like bringing this back home, like the impact you guys have seen is now those folks can dedicate their time to a different area in which they can find another edge for race day. So it's again, it's all about the same idea of continuous improvement. We save some time and now we can use that to keep going, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. The one thing that never happens, you don't save time and then just suddenly kick your feet up and enjoy life. We're constantly, pushing for performance in all areas. And
well, there's a bunch of things behind you trying to do the same, right?
That's right. I mean, that's the whole game.
So I think at this point we have bring this topic a few times, and again I want to close before going to the next stage. But I again, Kevin, I'll reiterate it, but I don't know if you have any other comments on this. One of the things that impressed me of RFK was again the approach to technology as a key differentiator. Again, beyond Tulip, can you tell us a couple other examples on how technology has made breakthroughs and how you guys are thinking out what's next?
Yeah. So, we're so all in on technology that we've created this thing called the RFK Tech Alliance. And, it's an initiative that I lead here at the company. Our goal with the Tech Alliance is to create a collection of technical partners who are supporting us with the best technology, in the market for the problems that we're trying to solve. When we go to sign up a tech partner, we're not simply just looking to sign up anybody that will talk to us. We're trying to find the best solution for the problems that we're solving. And as a result of that, it's really helped to drive a lot of initiatives, forward that otherwise I'm not sure we would have covered the ground that we needed to cover. There are things like metrology. We've talked a little bit here about just sort of the next gen car and what that has done in terms of change within the sport. The metrology side of that is a huge part. And we recognized pretty early on that, some of our 3D scan equipment and point measurement equipment and the CMM equipment that we had throughout the building was adequate, but it wasn't really going to sustain us for the long haul, and we needed a partner in that area. So we reached out to Faro Technologies, and that was a company that was very interested in doing a partnership with us. And as a result of that, we've got tremendous metrology equipment in the building now, and we're able to do so much more than what we were able to do prior to making that deal, because they just have the best stuff out there. And so that's an example of one of many of our tech partners. Without turning this into a commercial, there's a couple others that are probably worth mentioning. Another Boston company, Lumafield, right around the corner from you guys.
Also a customer of us.
Yeah, customer of your guys. Lumafield is fantastic. A lot of our assemblies, if you think about like a brake master cylinder is a good example, that master cylinder goes together, and once it's completed, the entire assembly is a blind assembly. It's you're not able to look inside and see if you cut a seal on the assembly process or flipped a seal or have some sort of misalignment. And Lumafield, they have CT scanning equipment, and so we were able now to take completed parts as part of our finished product, and we can do CT scanning on them and verify that that those builds went together the way they should, and prevent problems on the racetrack. At the end of the day, I had a gentleman I used to work with who always told me that it's never a problem until it finds its way to the racetrack. Anything we find in the shop, we can solve that problem, and that truly isn't a problem. But when it's on the racetrack and it's a failure, that's a problem. And so a lot of these tools and technologies that we're bringing in on the metrology side are really, helping us, to keep those problems from finding their way to the racetrack.
And Kevin, I'm just curious, like, again, this is just something I honestly just thought about this, but what if, has it happened that you're looking for a piece of technology, or how would you approach when you're looking for a piece of technology to solve a specific problem and you don't see it in the marketplace?
Mm-hmm.
Do you partner with your tech alliance? You reach out to the alliance and say, hey, who can help me with that? At some point you decide you're going to do it internally. How do you source your innovation is the kind of my question.
Yeah, so you're looking at him. Being in the sport for 25 years, I feel like, and having done many different roles in the sport through that time, I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of a lot of the problems that we fight. And anytime that somebody comes in my office and says, "Hey, I've been thinking about this. We need to go after a solution here." I roll up my sleeves and start on the process of finding who the right companies are to go interact with to see if we can find a solution. So a lot of that work falls on my shoulders these days, and it's pretty fun. I enjoy it. It's problem solving every day that I come to work, and I can't ask for much more than that.
Yeah, and the last thing I would say before jumping to our last section is the interesting thing also is that you're very willing to experiment with new technologies, but at the same time, there's a requirement for being precise at the racetrack. That's a tension that is not necessarily easy to balance.
So we're very willing to experiment with new technologies, but those new technologies sometimes stay in a alpha or beta mode, for a long time until we have just the ultimate confidence that they're quote unquote race ready. That's just the reality of it.
Yeah, and that's something, again, we can all attest that similar cases in manufacturing, other technologies that were promising, still not there.
Yeah.
Great. Well, this is our last section of our program for today. Again, the goal in this section is just to talk a little bit about the future for RFK, but also try to drive home how can folks in the audience learn from your experience. So I'll start by saying you recently added a third car to your team. This is great news. Like, it's growing. How was that change? How much complexity does that introduce? How do you guys manage that change? Can you tell us a little bit about how impactful is that, and what else are you guys thinking in terms of technology for the remainder of the season?
Yeah. So it's easy. You went from 2 to 3, so it should be 33% more complex, right?
I would imagine.
It's not. The interesting thing about sort of this multi-team environment is when you have two teams, it's just two groups of people that you're managing, and it's two sets of parts that you're managing. And, in some ways, it's easy to get the right people in the room and make a decision and move forward because it's just a smaller group. But it becomes a whole different dynamic when you introduce, a third set of all that into the equation. There are some things, hey, it's pretty straightforward and easy, right? It is a 33%, increase in need or demand. Where I find it gets real tricky is really sort of the soft side of things, getting people to get along, or getting people to all sort of pull the rope in the same direction. Racing is a complicated sport, and we all can decide based on many very reasonable reasons that performance lies over here or it lies over there, and so you're always getting tugged to go work on things as an engineering group. And when you add another set of voices into the room, that just makes that much more complex. So part of the secret in getting a multi-team environment working properly is all in the people. That's That's not earth shattering. That's probably true across, many different industries.
And that's true.
Yeah. But, I say it because it's real, it's true, and it's a very impactful part of what we do. Our performance and success ultimately lies in the people. And so getting the people to come together and work together as an organization, even though they're fighting for their individual team, that's the challenge and everything. And it's fun most days, not always, but it is definitely always a challenge. And when it comes together, it's very rewarding.
Kevin, another interesting development between RFK, again, Tulip, it's that you guys are also working with another NASCAR team that is using Tulip as well. And again, we're not showing a lot of this, but can you mention really quickly how that came to be, and how do you think those synergies are like important?
Yeah. So after the 2024 season, what was formerly the Stewart-Haas Racing organization sort of went through a rebrand and major change in their organization, and now they're a Haas factory team. And the Haas factory team, in some ways, they're starting from square one and building that organization back up. And so the way they structure themselves, for the next couple of years, is to partner up with us on the engineering side to get a lot of their tools and resources and the things that they need to go racing directly from us. So in a lot of ways, they're our fourth car. They're an engineering customer. They're really close with us. We share, all of our data back and forth. And one of those things that is part of that is, again, our tool set. And that means that Tulip is a part of that. So this was a case where, we were able to take one of our tech partners and actually install it in a new organization who's partnered up with us, and they're getting a benefit from that.
Excellent. And Kevin, is there any other technologies that you're excited about? Anything else that you can talk for that is upcoming?
Yeah. Technology and NASCAR, it's constantly changing, and so for fear of being trendy, I don't want to say the AI word, but the reality is it's here. It's pretty powerful, and there's probably
is it time for you guys to start like dabbling on it? Are you actively investigating? What are you in that continuum?
I mean, we've got some things we're working on already. Nothing that is terribly advanced or something that's going to go win us a race anytime soon. But we are doing some pretty neat things. There's some pretty easy wins that you can go grab there, and some of those we have. There's some other much more complex and complicated things that we're kind of taking a measured approach about right now. The thing about any of this is you kind of have to pair up what you work on with the resources you have. We're a pretty small team, and we know, quote unquote, what our day job is, and we've got to really give our customers, which are the race teams, we got to give them the tools that they need to go race with today. Just quite frankly, so they can do their job today. But we balance that with the tools that they'll need for tomorrow. And I like to tell my team that, it's part of our responsibility to deliver the tools of the future, to the teams, even when they're not asking for them. Yeah. A victory is when we can give them something that wasn't even on their radar, but when
they didn't know they needed it.
Yeah, they didn't know they needed it. And
exactly.
So, we've got a few of those projects sort of spinning in the background, and, a whole long list of ideas of things like that one day we'll get to.
Got it. The last question I had here, Kevin, for you, and again, we as we all know, we live in a very changing, volatile world. Like, how you guys approach, again, reacting to current events, the supply chain disruptions, the potential of, like, again, delays and cost changes. I'm assuming technology is a key component, but you tell us a little bit of like, how are you guys thinking about this?
Yeah.
And how to react to a world in which you don't know really?
Yeah. Well, the good thing is NASCAR racing in general is sort of always perpetually that way. When working with NASCAR and how often and frequent things change within the sport, we kind of always have to be on our toes. The next 12 months, I think, we are not immune to any of the same problems that the rest of the world's going to be going through. Some of the global economic, environments that are very front and center, just within the last week. Those things are all, issues that we'll have to be dealing with. A lot of our suppliers, probably all of our suppliers, are US based, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all of their raw materials and everything that goes into building those parts and components are all US based. And so as a result of that, I think our industry is vulnerable to all the same challenges that probably any manufacturing company is looking at right now. How are we preparing for it? Great question. I think, in some ways we're kind of actively trying to determine, what steps we need to take and a cautious and measured approach. Don't overreact to anything, but be ready to react when the time's right and the move is obvious.
Makes sense. Yeah, they're hard to predict. It's like, well, you don't know what you don't know. So
yeah,
be ready with alternatives. Sounds like a solid advice. Excellent. This is our last slide before opening the floor for Q&A. I did wanted to take a time to consolidate again a few of the things we discussed today. Mm-hmm. As you saw from RFK's example, again, establish a digital first culture. The way I would like to say it is like, again, embrace technology. As technology is a disruptor or differentiator. You are the one who's going to decide which side is going to be. Again, it's very clear that in the case of Kevin and RFK, they took it up front and said, well, we're going to be in charge of using technology to our advantage. Yeah. The reality is that's the world in any area of manufacturing you could be. Get the right team and partnership on board. Again, Kevin mentioned having the right, not only the right experts, but getting them to work together towards the same goal. Again, I would imagine sometimes in NASCAR it's very easy to point at the end result, but we all work with people. Like there's agendas and egos everywhere, so it doesn't really seems that different. I love this point, Kevin. Just start. Don't get stuck in planning. You mentioned this when we were chatting in preparation for this talk. Just roll up your sleeve and go up to work. Right? Try one. Try again. Again, which sounds in your case counterintuitive to like racing and security, but that's what I love. Like those things are not at odds when you do it properly.
For us, on that point, because we didn't talk about it really in depth, but what's important there is for us, we rapidly move through a season schedule. 38 weeks out of the year we're racing. We don't have time to draw out these big elaborate plans and stick with them. We have to roll up the sleeves and get going and build solutions quickly. And so that's a very racer's mentality. That's something that's part of the ethos of the motorsports world. Don't get sort of slowed down with planning. Just
too hung up.
Yep.
And then sorry, and I realize we're closing here on time, but the last part is, again, it sounds trite. It sounds as a platitude, but it's the reality. Like continuous improvement, never stop chasing innovation. Again, it applies in NASCAR, applies in manufacturing, probably applies to day-to-day life. As Kevin mentioned, or as we said here, either you're improving or you're falling behind. In your business is very obvious. But yeah, the key component here is that really you have to just keep going. There's no standing still.
That's
awesome. Right. Kevin, any last departing thoughts before we jump to a Q&A session?
No. Let's give the audience what little bit of time we have left here.
Great.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for that great performance. We have a few questions here, and it looks like this may be the only question we get to, but it's a big one. We have several audience members asking about data. So the question is, what KPIs do you track, and what data points or sources do you look at most frequently to optimize performance?
So, in a minute or less, it's going to be hard to answer this one completely, but I'll do my best. For us, data, we get data coming at us from all different sides of this thing, and one of our most important sources is the telemetry data off the car. That is sort of the gold standard for information about our performance. From that, we drive a tremendous amount of data science and sort of analysis that goes into the decisions that we have to make for future builds or for future development paths, solving current problems, looking back on our historical performance and trying to draw insight. If I had to kind of narrow it down to one, that's probably the most important one. But beyond that, just touching a few small different other areas. We're generating on a daily basis out in the shop a tremendous amount of data around our parts and pieces, from cycling of those parts, condition of the parts post race. Every bit of information that we gather along the way using our Tulip apps that we've built helps us to further refine our build process and further refine our inventory levels, cost management, all the normal traditional business, topics and things that have to get addressed. We deal with them too. We're not a race team with an infinite supply of money to run off of. So we have to be efficient with our resources, and these days we're able to collect quite a bit more information just here in the shop to allow us to do that.
Okay, terrific. I think you answered several questions that our audience had in one fell swoop. So thank you for that. We unfortunately are going to have to leave it there because we have reached the top of the hour. And with that, I again want to say excellent presentation. I would also like to thank our speakers today, Humberto Silva with Tulip, as well as Kevin Kidd with RFK Racing. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Tulip. And most of all, I'd like to thank you, our terrific audience, for your time, your attention, and your questions. And on behalf of Industry Week, have a great, productive remainder of your day.